record this too. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I don't trust my
And
this thing.
y'all are welcome to record this.
Yeah, actually,
You're
what mic are
absolutely,
you? Where's your
absolutely.
mic?
Where's my mic? Why?
It sounds a little distant.
Okay, I'll bring it a little closer.
Great.
A little closer, like that.
I guess so.
All
Okay.
right.
I just want to make sure everybody can hear your brilliance, honey. All
All right.
right, everybody. So I'm Tanana Reevdew.
I'm
Oh,
Stephen Barnes.
he's Stephen Barnes. And let me go ahead and share my screen. I'll go to slideshow, I suppose. We are primarily known as
Hello.
authors, but we are also screenwriters, which is what brings us here today. And we've written, well, Steve started. Steve, why don't you start? Because you were
Okay.
screenwriting.
I've been working in television and film for 40 years. Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Stargate SG-1, um, horror noir, the two different versions of the Twilight Zone. And then we directed, we crowdfunded and wrote and produced a short film, Danger Word, back 10 years ago. And then we just finished directing and writing a new short film, uh, The Keeper. And we
Yes.
are now in the process of setting things up to make a feature.
Could everyone
So it's
mute,
in
please?
that
If you're
process
in
that we
attendance,
realized,
could you mute?
we need to leave a
We would
trail of
appreciate it.
breadcrumbs.
I
We
don't
need
want
to
to call
share
out the
what it is that
names
we
that
know
I
here.
see who's not muted, but please mute. Go on, darling.
Okay. So that's my basic thing. Why don't you talk about yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Tanana Reevdew. Just privileged to have been collaborating with this man for nearly 30 years on screenplays. We're about to have our 28th wedding anniversary. And okay, I have to call the name. Iman, could you mute? Okay. Can you see how to get into the controls, honey?
Okay. I'm looking for that now.
Okay. So in any case, I did not write screenplays before I got married, but since Steve and I have been married, okay, I'll do it. Since Steve and I have been married, we've worked on the Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone. We've worked on horror noir for Shudder, and like Steve said, we have our new. I'm getting everybody. I'm getting
Okay, we need
everybody.
to figure out how to mute this.
Yeah, I'm muting everybody. I can see
Okay,
who's
great.
not muted. Got it. I think I finally
Mute them
got it.
all.
Yeah. It's
Mute
just
them.
hard to compete. I know no one's not trying to do it on purpose, but it's hard to compete. So in any case, we have also consulted with various companies, including Universal Studios on a couple of projects, Amazon, Blumhouse, Pearl Street Productions, which is Matt Damon's company. So, although we're primarily known as authors, we have been working in the film and television space. And honestly, we just wanted to create a webinar that we wish we had seen. Like, I definitely wish I had seen that could have saved us or me a lot of time and effort and trial by fire. So that's what this is all about. And like I said, it is packed, action packed. So we're just going to get started.
Let's just do this.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk in trades and on social media about Hollywood dying. I'm just going to address that at the start. Now, those of you who are here are the optimists, and you don't really you're not paying attention to those headlines. But whoa, weird echo. Are you all hearing an echo? We don't usually have these kinds of issues. We have a podcast, all kinds of things we do. Does anybody else hear that weird echo? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to go back to muting people. I'm going to mute all and then unmute me and
Yeah.
Steve.
Okay.
Okay, we're
We
back.
might have to do that a couple times because
Yeah. Sorry about that,
We'll get
people.
it. We'll get it handled.
I hate technical issues. But in any case, you are the optimist and you are here because you believe in your dream. And this is not necessarily the webinar to teach you everything you need about how to break into Hollywood. But before you break into Hollywood, you need to know how to write a script. And what I like to tell people is that, there was a time in the industry, like if you see the movie adaptation, like, for instance, some of you may be prose writers who want to transition to screenplays. And if you saw the movie adaptation, you saw that Hollywood often wants nothing to do with the author of a project. Well, that has changed a little bit. There are writers, Victor LaValle, in fact, was paired with a screenwriter for The Changeling. Um, and there are other examples of writers who have opportunities to turn in scripts. And I like to tell writers, don't be uncomfortable about the fact that you're just learning screenplays, because a learning screenplay, which somewhat by definition may not be the best, okay? A learning screenplay is still better than a short story or a book to a producer, and you can still sell it. You can still
And if
sell
you
it.
can, if you understand what screenplays are, you're in a better position to talk to a producer about the situation. What you really want is to be in that room. You really do want that because both to get your vision there and there's a lot of money involved. I mean, there's an insane amount of money in Hollywood. It's insane how much there is. The difficulty is positioning yourself to get it. So
Yes.
by the time this is over, you will have several tools that will help with that specifically.
Yes. And so that's yeah, now's the time to prepare for those future opportunities. Why are we giving this away, honey?
Well, it's because I visualize. We're in September. We're going to be teaching a workshop on making your own short film. We'll talk about that more later. But I figured there were 4 hours of critical material, and I don't like to teach, and I know Tananari does not like to teach for more than 3 hours at a block. So I thought, let's take that first hour, which would be about screenplays, and let's teach that for free. Let's give that away for free. Now we will have a recording of this, and we can let people who go to that workshop watch this recording to teach them the things that otherwise we'd be wearing out our vocal cords teaching. So
We should,
you're getting a chunk of a paid workshop for free because we're lazy.
yeah. We are far from that. So here's what you'll expect today. First, we'll talk about story structure. If you have taken any of our life writing courses in the past, you're very familiar with our approach to story structure, but not everyone here has taken one of our life writing courses. So you will get our take on story structure, screenwriting basics, including formatting, what's next after writing a script, and then bonus, a path to success. And I cannot wait to get
I cannot
started
wait either.
on
And what I
writing.
can tell you is that this basic thing about story structure is exactly responsible for being able to publish 3 million words of fiction as well as work in television. So this is cutting close to the bone. Now this is my standard way of describing story is the Joseph Campbell model of the hero's journey. And there are modifications here because Campbell was talking about mythology, and what we're talking about is storytelling. And stories overlap with mythology, but there's some different intents. And mythologies generally become part of the tribal structure because they're teaching specific lessons. So they can be anecdotes, they can be parables, all sorts of stuff. But there's a structure underneath them. And once you understand that, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So, in order to communicate this to you as rapidly as possible, I want you to remember the first Star Wars movie, A New Hope. Star Wars, the first one. The first step in the hero's journey is that the hero is confronted with a challenge. Now, this is obvious because if you're not confronted with a challenge, it's just the same day, day after day after day. So they have to want something. In the movie Star Wars, the moment when the challenge was confronted was, come with me, Luke, learn the ways of the Force. Luke Skywalker, this farm boy, is being given a chance to become a Jedi. The second step is that the character will reject the challenge because if they accept it immediately, it means that they consider the challenge to be fairly trivial. Now, each of these steps, by the way, these are not, they're diagnostic and developmental. They're not prescriptive. So they're like the 88 keys of a piano. Once you understand the purpose of each of the steps. You then are expected to first learn them in a kind of a simple way and then do jazz with them, have fun with them, mix it around. Okay, so the Luke's rejection of the challenge is I promised Uncle Owen I'd work on the moisture evaporators. And the third step is that the character is forced or allowed to accept the challenge. Because if they don't accept the challenge, you have a very quiet story of possibly of despair. I mean, movies like Ordinary People. The entire movie is Donald Sutherland trying to decide what to do, what action to take. That, does he save his marriage or does he save his son? So the, Luke accepts the challenge fairly soon. Teach me to be a Jedi like my father. The road of trials is just the stuff that the characters do, the places they go, the people they talk to. In the process of this, they will learn the lessons they need. So, what did Luke do? He went to Mos Eisley Cantina. He went on the Millennium Falcon. He went to the Death Star. He went to, Alderaan got blown up so that they weren't able to go there. They went to the Rebel base, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, next slide, sweetheart.
Absolutely.
Okay, so simultaneously with the road of trials, along the road of trials, just like Dorothy meeting the Tin Man and the Red and the Lion and so forth, the character gains allies and powers. Now, these might be capacities that they have within themselves, the ability to tell the truth, the ability to act with courage. They might be meeting people that they can fall in love with or help them or whatever. And so this is, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Chewbacca, R2-D2, so forth, the people that he met. The powers are things like courage, leadership, using a lightsaber, tapping into the Force, and so forth. This, there's always a point where the character, if the story is about growth, then the character has to run out of everything they think they are. At some point, there has to be a point of despair. Okay, and in Star Wars, I would say that that's where Obi-Wan Kenobi dies because Obi-Wan was supposed to help Luke become a man, become a Jedi, and he dies. He loses his father figure too soon, which throws him into seven, the dark night of his soul. This is the emotional response to the thing that happened. And this negative thing, this big negative thing, probably happens within the last 10 to 20% of the movie. Usually somewhere in there that you hit the character with the worst thing imaginable to force them into despair. And in this, the artistry of this is that between the death of Obi-Wan, instead of Luke moping around, he goes into action. You go to the Rebel base, and then they attack the Death Star. So the dark night of the soul, the moment when it feels like all is lost, the Death Star prepares to fire. Okay, the leap of faith is the moment at which the character finds faith in one of three things: faith in themselves, faith in their companions, or faith in a higher power. Trust your feelings, Luke. And then Han Solo comes diving in out of the sun to save him. So he trusted his feelings and trusted a higher power, the Force, and he trusted his companions. The ninth step is that if you take these other steps, you've confronted evil, and this time you are victorious, and the Death Star is blown up. And the last step is the student becomes the teacher, the return to the village with the elixir, the movement to the higher level. Everyone gets medals, except, of course, poor Chewie.
What's that
So,
about? Anyway,
anyway,
and I just want to throw something in here.
yeah,
One thing I know prose writers, and I know some of you are prose writers, and one of the things that prose writers really don't like is the idea of a formula, which is what this sounds like. I get that. So remember what Steve said. Literally, we are not telling you to use this as a formula. I never heard of the hero's journey before I started publishing my novels. By diagnostic tool, that means if you're writing a script and it's lagging, it's not landing, like you're sharing it with readers or even yourself, you're bored, you're probably missing something. You're missing something that feels like a story, that feels like your protagonist has some kind of objective. There
yeah. What do
aren't
they want?
yeah, and what's in their way. If you know what your character wants and what's standing in their way, you're halfway through your movie. And frankly, sometimes, especially with a short script, but even with a feature script might be only about two or three of these steps. A character taking a leap of faith, that's the whole story, and a quieter story. right? A quieter story. So yeah, go on, sweetie. Yeah,
No, I mean, I think that's it. That if you understand, if you organize the events in your head into this order, everybody on the planet will recognize it as a story. However, if you do it exactly this way, they will also consider it too familiar and trivial. So
right,
it's like you don't play piano by just playing the 88 keys in order. You make music by understanding what the notes are, what the significance of these steps is in the emotional response of your reader, and then you choreograph that. You play with that. What the reader wants, what the viewer wants, is for you to give them what they want, which is a full emotional experience, but not give it to them in the way they expect. If you
right.
don't surprise your reader, if you don't surprise the viewer, you have failed.
Yeah,
You
it
have
can't,
failed.
you're not trying to write predictably, you're trying to write in a pattern that feels like a story to the people who are experiencing it.
Okay. Now, because I really wanted to write, I talked to dozens of professional writers, Octavia Butler and Robert Heinlein and Ray Bradbury and Harlan Ellison, and just asked them, how did you make it? What did you do? And what I found was that there actually was a pattern that I could extract from them that most of them did. And it, it boils down to these 6 steps. And if you will pay attention to this and take it seriously, I guarantee you've gotten your hours worth by far. This has never failed. Okay. You you make a commitment to write at least one sentence every day. Just a sentence, just one. You write 1 to 4 short stories a month, not novels. Don't start with novels. Starting with novels means is like running a marathon when you haven't run around the block.
And for our
Don't
purposes,
do
that would
that.
be features.
Yes, because we'll get back to that. We really will. Polish and submit at least one story a month. Every month, you are submitting a story to try to sell it. Every single month. Okay, so you could do more often than that, but you don't do less. 4, don't rewrite except to editorial request. In other words, stop trying to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. The process is what does the job. The system is more important than one story's rejection or acceptance. You've got tons of stories inside you. Believe that. Believe that you have, once you make contact with the part of you that is a storyteller and reject the part of you that says this isn't good enough, this isn't good enough, this isn't good enough endlessly, you can write all day long. It'll be garbage, but you can do it. The trick is to get about 80% of the way there. It's one story per month. If you can't get all the way there, write shorter stories. Write stories that are short until you can get that done in a month. The 5th step is one that people miss so much. Read 10 times as much as you write. You have to be constantly giving yourself input, constantly research, constantly experiment. And the last step is repeat this cycle. Once you see this cycle 100 times. I found out the average writer wrote between 20 and 30 stories before they published. So I committed to writing 100, and
So,
that gave plenty
I'm
of
sorry.
room. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as you heard, that's our life writing process. Primarily, we have used it with our prose students, so don't be confused when we talk about short stories or submissions which work differently with scripts, because this pattern can really be applied to any goal.
Yes.
Define the smallest piece that matters and do it
Yes.
daily,
Except
like in
if
terms of a
there's a place
script.
we can use to find scripts to read, yeah, Google online. There's tons of free script sources. There's tons, and then
We
thousand
have,
page sources.
yeah, we have resources at the end of this deck, which everyone will get
That's
a
right.
copy of with places you can find scripts. Define the
So
piece that can be completed in a week.
yes,
You
and do
go
that,
on.
or define the smallest piece that matters. Do it daily. That might be you write one line of dialogue or one line of description every day. So you are making that commitment. 2, define the piece that can be completed in a week. Is that one scene, a tiny little short script, like a commercial length script? 3, define the piece that can be completed in a month that actually engages the outside world. Would that be submission to an agent or to a potential director? But you need to get used to being rejected. You need to get past the part of you that is so terrified of somebody saying no that you can't stand and look at somebody and tell them, give me, this is my script. I believe in this script. If you will invest, when I wrote for Baywatch almost cost $1 million an episode. That's just naked people running around on the beach. So movies, go range from a couple 100,000 to a couple 100 million. But you're asking people to invest. You're asking the actors, the director, everybody else. You have to be able to say with confidence, this is good. Squash your professionalism, or your perfectionism. Perfectionism is procrastination masquerading as quality control. It is, it's never going to be perfect, but the more you write, the smaller the errors you can spot. So that means you're in a never-ending battle with the voice in your head that says this is no good. You will never win that. Writer's block, to me, is a confusion of two different states of mind. The flow state, where you're writing, and the editing state, where you're evaluating what you have written. Those are two different states. Have two different desks if you need to. Wear two different hats if you need to. But the part of you that writes is the kid part. It's that little boy, that little girl inside you that wants to just let me put on a show. The editor is the adult saying this isn't good enough yet. And that adult can squash a kid's dreams so fast. You have to protect that child part of yourself. Okay? The equivalent of the fifth step is that you're constantly studying and experimenting. You're constantly, in this particular case, watching movies. Constantly watching movies and television. I watch at
And
least
reading
one
scripts.
every single day. Sometimes two, sometimes three. But that's one of my primary entertainments because I have to create that connection. Okay. And then the sixth step, and the most important in many ways, is that once you have defined these pieces, repeat the cycle 100 times. If a goal isn't worth you repeating it 100 times, why are you doing this? If you set it up right, it takes about the same amount of time that it would take you to get an AA degree. Once you just kind of say, okay, I'm willing to do it, you can do it. Anything you want to say on any of that, T? Because I'm talking a lot right here. I really want to get through this and move on to you.
What'd you say?
Oh, if there's anything you'd like to say,
No,
please
no,
tell me.
no.
I'm
I'm
doing a lot
moving
of
to the
talking.
next slide so we can
Okay, so
keep.
the the yogic chakra. So we just talked about story, and we talked about process, the way to relate the hero's journey to the heroic journey of a writer. You are a writer on a journey to write a script. And so the exact same steps can apply to you. But stories have two different elements. There is the what character is, and there's what story is. The best model of what character is, I think, can be found in yoga. It has the seven chakras. Muladhara, Svasana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddhi, Anja, and Sahasrara, going from the base up. That is, Muladhara is survival. It's your core survival. And if you threaten the character's survival, if the value at stake in your story is survival, people will always, they're almost compelled to keep reading or keep watching because it's hard to turn away if somebody's life is at risk. It just is. The second thing is sexuality. Okay, so everybody understands survival, everybody, and the vast majority of people understand wanting sex and love. So, the heart space, anahata, is also there. But the third space, manipura, is power within the structure of a tribe. So our first three steps, which are the most important ones, and if you want to grab everybody's attention, you either threaten the character's survival, have them on a search for sex, or have them trying to increase power within their social structure in one way or the other. The next thing is love. We're through the basic things now, and now we're in the emotions. The character seeking love. Very, very common story. Boy meets girl has driven so many stories that there's just no counting it, and that's the background of almost of about 80% of stories is a search for love, a search for power within a tribe, a search for survival. Vishuddhi, the throat chakra, is communication. A character who goes to school to learn, it's either learning or communicating. There are fewer stories. You'll notice that as you go up from the bottom, fewer and fewer stories embrace this. Fewer stories are about how to communicate, but they still exist.
The King's
And on,
Speech. That's the only one
huh?
the King's Speech is the
Oh
only
yeah,
recent one I
the
can think
paper
of.
chase. Anything about somebody going to school and trying to get a degree would be about the throat chakra. Anja, the third eye, is intellect, the search to understand reality, to map reality. What is this world about? And this starts getting, very intellectual. So if you do movies like A Beautiful Mind that are about an intellectual understanding of advanced math, they also find a way to sandwich in a love story and a car chase.
Yeah, you have
It's
to have
really
everything in
funny
there.
once you understand the game here. Once you get the game, it's very entertaining.
All right,
And
I'm
then,
gonna
of course,
zip.
there's Sahasrara, Spirit, the
Oh,
search for spirit. And so a movie about Joan of Arc or the Dalai Lama or something like this, somebody who is investigating the ultimate secrets of the universe. Those seven things, any story sorts into one of those, and although the size of the audience shrinks as you go up, there is still enough audience to make your work very successful. Turn it over to you, sweetheart.
so hopefully you don't just want to be a screenwriter. You're thinking, what story do I want to tell? I'm sincerely hoping that most of you have some clue of what kind of story you're hoping to tell. Is it an adaptation of something you've already published? Is it something you've been writing as prose that you want to try as a screenplay or a script you've wanted to write your whole life? Know what your story is about, not just the storyline. Like a man loses his dog, the dog travels 50 miles, reunited with the man, but the underlying reason you want to tell this story, the kernel of personal history or trauma or observation of the world, like Jordan Peele is a great example. Even though Get Out, first couple of drafts, he was just about where really we hear because we haven't seen them, but he actually appeared in one of our courses and told us this, that it was about the odd person left out. That was his first couple drafts. Just like, okay, everybody else knows each other from college or whatever. I'm the one odd duck. Nobody knows me. That's lonely. And then he realized, oh, this is about race. This is about what it feels like to be the only one in the room. This is actually a story about what quote unquote white supremacy feels like. So find that about. What is it? That's not the plot. It's not Chris goes to his girlfriend's house and meets the parents. It's what is it about? And you might discover it's about something different that you think as you're working on it, but assume that your best work is going to come from a deeper place. I've heard this from executives who kind of want to probe us about, like, why do you want to direct this or why do you want to write? Because they're desperately hoping we have something to say and we don't just want to be rich and famous because that's tiresome. People want stories that move people, touch people, propulse the stories that are propulsive. Great characters, that's what you definitely want to create. Spend a lot of time reading books about characterization. I would suggest, especially if you're not an experienced writer already. You want psychological realism. You, even if you don't convey that in all in your script, you should know their history. Who are they? Where do they come from before we meet them in this opening scene? And don't be afraid of the word plot. As Steve said, if you look at the chakras, as you look at the hero's journey, this happens, this happens, this happens. This is what it's about. One of the biggest differences between the way screenwriting is taught and the way writing is taught in MFA programs is that MFA programs very often do not teach story structure. So you're sent out into the world knowing lots of pretty words, but you don't know how to move a plot forward. And that's something that screenwriting will beat into you because screenwriting is a lot of it is all about what happens. What does the character do now based on what just happened to them? And great details to bring your scenes and characters to life, but hopefully not too many details. Leave some of it for the set decorator. Okay, so a good opening scene, if the protagonist is present, and by the way, people who have questions, please take note of your questions or put them in chat because we're going to have designated times for Q&A. But just because of, how quickly we're trying to move through the material, we're going to be mindful of not interrupting the lecture for questions, if that's okay. Sorry about that. If the protagonist is present, you create a protagonist we believe in and care about, like from jump, something about them that feels familiar. It could be anyone on their way to work. It could be your grandmother's kitchen. Like, what is it that helps? the character feel real almost immediately with those world building details and the unfolding events, hint at the intended journey of the story, or at least what kind of person this is, what their temperament is, and hint at the protagonist's quest, perhaps even their primary challenge or one of them. In other words, hint at the conflict. I just saw this reinforced by someone who reads a lot of scripts for contests rather. We have to know what the character wants on every page. We have to know what's standing in their way and what are those conflicts. And I like to suggest that people start a script with an oh shit moment. Like, like maybe it's not the central conflict, but it's something that is revealing of your character's temperament. Are they the kind of people who freeze when
Well,
they're
that's what they do in every James Bond movie. Every James Bond movie starts with a mini adventure that establishes the world and the character.
right? Good point. So that's what even if you're not writing anything like a James Bond, it might be a quieter script, which most scripts are. You still want to find a way to find those micro conflicts that tell your reader, in this case, the person who might give you money to buy the script, that this is an engaging story worth moving on to the next page. Your character's arc. When you're working with executives, they're not writers. They wish they were. Sometimes they try to be. They have a few terms that they know, and you need to know the terms that they know. And one of the terms they know is what's your character's arc. We learned this the hard way when we were working on a script many, 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 many years ago. What is the character's journey? And I don't mean on the street or on a path. I mean literally, where do they begin as a person and where do they end as a person? Like if you look at the hero's journey, it's a person who doesn't feel they're equipped for this task at hand. They don't even want to do it. They grudgingly say, okay, I'll do it. And then they learn how to do it. Okay. So they go from ignorance to power. They go from weakness to strength. That's the kind of thing that you're thinking about when you are creating your character's journey and the story. A character who doesn't change is a witness character, and that can work at a very high level. There's no such thing as rules, just principles. But as learning screenwriters, I do not advise that you write scripts where your main character does not have an epiphany or change in some way.
One exception to that has been very successful is the James Bond series.
Yeah.
Bond, except for the years with Daniel Craig, Bond did not change. He was the same person at the beginning of the movie that he was at the end. But what they did was every movie became about the revelation of his true character. Okay. The difference between his characterization, which is a lounge lizard, a womanizer, a raconteur, a gourmet, and his actual being, which is the deadliest commando in the world. And every single James Bond villain makes the mistake of believing the characterization, and every movie is set up to strip away the characterization until we reveal his character in the last reel. Every one of them did, and they've been making those movies for 60 years. If you can figure out a journey for your character that appeals to people that strongly, you got a sale.
Yeah. But most of us are starting with a character who does change, right? And so what obstacles are in your character's way? We as the audience need to know what they are, even if your character doesn't always know, but usually they do know. Sometimes those obstacles are internal, something about their personality that has to change. The Accountant, what's that Ben Affleck movie? Is it called The Accountant?
The accountant.
He changed, didn't he?
Yeah.
He overcame his internal
Well,
conflicts.
in the second movie especially, he changed. So there are little changes in the first one, like reconnecting with his brother.
Right.
In the second one, he is even a little bit more step toward humanity.
Yeah. So, what are the obstacles, both internal and external? The more you have both, the more richly conceived your character will feel. And then the most important thing, the meat and potatoes. What will your character do to overcome those obstacles? Sometimes as prose writers, we have a lot of scenes where characters are just sitting, drinking coffee, staring out of a window, and thinking about their childhood. That doesn't fly when we're watching a movie. So, what are they doing to overcome those obstacles? And the next section will be principles of screenwriting. Was there I haven't looked at whatever any questions might have been. Is there something
Well, if
specific?
somebody had their hand up. If the person who had their hand up before would put it up again, we will address that question really quickly.
Okay,
Who has
that's
a question?
fine. Yeah,
Okay.
we're flying like already more than
Oh,
half the time
Victoria
is
Lettridge has a question.
okay. What is the question?
Victoria, put your
Hi,
hand up.
everybody.
Hi.
My hand wasn't actually the one that was up, but I do have a question.
Okay.
Okay.
Um, do you need to know the full end of the character arc? Like, do you need to know where they're going to end up completely?
No, you can write to explore the character. You can
Sure.
start your story. You don't know, but you have to know what their problem is. You have to know what they want, and what they want can change over the course of the story. But if you don't know that, there's nothing propelling the story from the inside. Okay, but if you surprise yourself with what they do, you're going to surprise the viewer too, and
Yeah,
that's a
there's
good thing. There's nothing wrong with not knowing exactly what's going to happen when you start. Absolutely nothing. Write it. Have
but
fun with it.
it can't feel like you don't know by the time you finish, if that makes
Yeah.
any
So
sense.
but that could be 5 drafts from now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You have to explore. I mean, outlining is an important part of screenwriting, and we will be talking about that next. So you'll have lots of opportunities to probe your imagination. Pantsing, some people pantsing, which is where you just sort of write and freeform and make it up as you go, is more common in prose. It can be done in screenwriting from an exploratory standpoint, but I will always suggest, because frankly, an outline is a payment point in screenwriting. You can get 5 figures for a page and a
Yeah,
half
we
if you
got a
know
lot
how
of
to.
money just from that pitch. A 3-page document that, act one, act two, act three, that boils down your story is one of the most valuable tools you can possibly have. The work that it takes to boil down your story to just 3 pages will clarify everything in your mind. Then you could conceivably have a friend over, and instead of asking them to read 120 pages of script, you just sit them down and say, what if you saw this movie? And you read your 3-page outline and you kind of watch their face while you do. And you see,
That's
where did they get interested? Where did they get bored? Where did they laugh? Where did they cry? Just like this. That you want every tool you can have to help tease that idea out of the back of your head and put it on the screen.
just
Just go ahead.
as an example, we sold a graphic novel accidentally that way because we let an editor read our treatment for a script. It was just basically an extended outline.
Yep,
And
yep.
he loved it
Carrie,
so much, he said, "This is a graphic novel," and we sold it.
Carrie Johnson has raised her hand.
Okay, really quickly, Carrie.
Carrie, Carrie, where's Carrie?
Well, the hand was up, but
The
Oh,
hand was up.
can you hear me?
Yes, I
yes,
can.
now we can.
That 3-page treatment, is that the 3 pages? Is that the treatment for a screenplay, or is that considered a short story? And how do you, in 3 pages, give you're giving a synopsis, but how are you developing all the characters?
Well,
Like,
even,
That is a
how do you?
it's basic. It's like you've got 3 minutes to describe a movie you saw last night to a friend. Do it, and I'll give you $1 million. You do it. You figure it out.
Okay,
This is a skill. It's difficult. So the way you learn how to do that is watch a bunch of movies and write 3-page treatments of them, or
okay,
write a 1-paragraph description of what it is. What if you ended up standing in an elevator next to Spike Lee and he said, you know something, I'm looking for an untested screenwriter, who has something for me. Have you got anything? If you can tell him in 3 sentences your idea, you'd have the sale right there. So don't be afraid of learning how to compress your ideas. It's really valuable in terms of communicating to other people. And writing for movies is all about being able to communicate your vision to somebody else. A script is not a work of fiction. A script is a blueprint for a work of fiction,
There you go.
where the director and the actors and the engineer, the cinematographers, everybody else look at your script and say, "Oh, okay, I know how to create this scene. I know how to create this. I know how to do this. I know how to do this." It is a level above ordinary writing, but it is so wonderful when everything works. The first time I was on a television set and I saw people making my story, Oh my God. I, it was mind blowing. It was so satisfying. It is worth the effort. Go ahead, T.
All right. So, important rule to remember is that screenwriting is visual storytelling. So, one of the things you remember when you're writing that treatment, which is another word for an outline, is that you are conveying a series of images and actions. Okay. And that helps clarify what to include and what not to include. We're not including conversations, for example. If they discuss something important, then say they talk about the heist. But the next thing is, what do we see? What do we see? That is the most page by page. When we first saw Ringu, the Japanese version of The Ring, it was on a very old videotape where we could not read the subtitles, and we watched that entire movie in Japanese, and it scared the crap out of us. We couldn't understand a word anybody was saying, but the images were frightening. So these are I've done an entire lecture on this in 90 minutes. I'm going to try to wrap this up in just a couple. The biggest mistakes learning screenwriters make. They think they can learn screenwriting just by watching movies. I mean, Steve mentioned he watches several movies a day, but that is not how you learn how to write screenplays if you are not reading screenplays also. You don't learn how to write screenplays by watching movies. Movies can reinforce what beginning, middle, and end are, and how long scenes can be, and the kinds of things that move and touch you. But it's like literally judging a book by the cover rather than reading the pages. Like, look
Yeah,
at the script.
once you create the connection between what you see and what you write on the page. Once you get that, then just watching movies is fantastic. But for you, or getting into the process of doing it, just schedule movie night.
Yeah, we'll
Saturday
get
night, pop popcorn, put on a movie you've already seen. Don't do this the first time you see a movie, and read the script at the same time. Find a script, download it, go to Netflix, watch the movie, read the script. And if you do that every week, by the end of a year, quicker than that, if you do it more than that, you will have developed a muscle that connects what you see in your head to what you see on the screen.
the screenplay to Sinners is available online for free. All you have to do is Google it because it was an Oscar movie. They disseminate that so as many people as possible can read it. And that's what you do. You read the Sinners script while you watch the movie, assuming you've already seen Sinners. Like Steve said, don't do it the first time. That ruins the movie.
Yeah, it's a
They
terrible way to watch a movie for the first time.
terrible way. So, and this is a really big one, and this is something that also comes to bear when you're working on that treatment, like compressing. They think they're writing the whole movie, not just a template. What do I mean by that? Aaron Brockovich with Julie, what's her name?
Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts, she's a fashionista. Like her whole thing was she dresses inappropriately, she dresses ostentatiously. If you read that script, you'll notice how little description there is of what she's wearing. Why? Because that's the costume designer's job. That's not your job. You don't have to describe every object in a room. You just have to describe the visual symbols that are important to get to know that character in the moment, right? So if a little girl is sad and she has a doll and she's holding on to that doll as her only sense of security, then yeah, you need to mention that she has a doll. But other than that, it will be the costume designer, the set designer, the props people who figure out what should be in her room or what objects she has. They can't explain what their script is about in a log line. A log line is like Steve was saying, usually it's a sentence, maybe two sentences, summarizing the story in an exciting way. Steve, what's our log line for The Keeper, our short film?
Oh, it's an elderly woman makes a deal with a demon to protect her granddaughter.
That's it. I could tell you a lot more about the movie, but if I ran into Spike Lee or whomever in the elevator and that's all the time I have, that's your log line. And the more you understand what your story is, the easier it is to write it. So it's not just in case you run into Spike Lee, it's a conversation you're having with your own imagination and your own muse. They think screenplays are, oh, they don't outline. This is a big one. Outlining is a hugely important skill to have in screenwriting. So even if you hate outlining, even if you swore you would never outline, I would imagine that by the time you've been writing scripts for a while, you will have learned how to outline. They think screenplays are dialogue driven. Yes, there are some screenwriters and directors who have fast talking characters, but for the most part, you should be able to write a very detailed treatment without a lick of dialogue in it.
Yeah,
Sometimes I
as a
see,
matter of fact, that we actually have a card that says the following,
yeah,
but I'll just say this right now. One of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard was from Alfred Hitchcock. And he said, when the script is finished and the dialogue is added, we're ready to shoot. In other words, you write the first draft as a silent movie without a line of dialogue. That way, you are sure that you have the visual representations necessary. If the reader, if the watcher, the viewer could turn off the sound and still follow the movie, you got a movie. If they need to have the sound in order to hear the dialogue, you may have a play. Okay, it
right.
may not be a movie, so you have to be careful. This is not there are exceptions to this, of course,
And no
but
absolutes left. I love to sprinkle in a word or two of dialogue and a treatment. I love to do
yeah,
that. But the one of the reasons you don't in a treatment especially, but even in like say a very, very early draft is because you may fall in love with that conversation in a scene that has no place in your story. And it colors your perception of whether it's slowing your story down. Because now you fell in love with that clever turn of phrase, which honestly never probably should have been in your script because this scene is unnecessary. So think about
and
that. As little
you
dialogue as
also have
possible.
the possibility of telling the story in visuals, and dialogue then becomes counterpoint to
Mm,
the visuals. If you have two characters who are sitting at a table and one says to the other, I love you, and the other person says, I love you too, and they mean it, that
boring.
scene is dead. It's dead as a skunk on the road. On the other hand, if one person says, I love you, and their back is turned, and we see the other person put poison into their tea, and they turn back, and the other person says, I love you too. Now that scene can play. The actors can actually play that scene because actors act the subtext. If you are forced to tell the scene visually, then you look for dialogue that allows the actors room to practice their craft.
Right.
You you pray for actors who are just as good as you are, who will bring something to it that you never expected. And I have seen that every single time. Every time. It's one of the most wonderful things in the world.
Yeah, it is. That's the most fun part, actually, is working with actors. They think, okay, they don't know how to reveal character or story visually. You know, this is a deep cut, The Big Chill. I know a lot of you haven't seen it, but it's an ensemble movie with several actors, including Jeff Goldblum and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they reveal everything you need to know about those characters in the first shot when we see them. And I'll just use Jeff Goldblum, who was basically a tabloid reporter who worked for People magazine. He gets the phone call that his friend has died. His nightstand is a People magazine, a tape recorder, a box of condoms. That's literally all you need to know about this guy. That's who he is in the movie. And every single character got their version of three items, three things about you. I got it now. And the last thing is they don't understand plot and story structure. So that's something that will be an ongoing lesson. It's not like you're going to automatically get it, just even if you've heard the hero's journey 100 times, sometimes you have to experience it through the writing process. So approaching screenwriting like a pro means you've learned how to use visual symbols like the box of condoms, like the tape recorder to show this is a reporter who likes to, forgive my language, get laid. Okay, that's all you need to know about him. Read scripts versus only watching TV and movies. Understand character arcs. Do not over direct in your screenplay, which means you're not writing that a character scratch their nose, they scratch their head, even sometimes that they break into tears. Like, okay, if it's sad, the actor will figure out if it's a tear situation or if their interpretation of the role means that sadness comes out in another way. You just say, Johnny is sad. I mean, I'm almost exaggerating, but I'm not. Johnny is sad. And then the actor figures out what sad looks like. Don't write too long. A lot of people do this. A script is, we're used to movies being 2 hours, which would be about 120 pages. Generally, you want to be less than that. 90 pages. That's a good length for a script. And for TV, 45 to 65 pages. Polish your dialogue. Now that you've done the visual storytelling, you have your scenes in order, and there's propulsion, and people can't put it down. Polish that dialogue so that they're not speaking the text. Like an example, I think there's an example coming up in the next card, so I'm not going to go into the example here. And have a trusted circle of beta readers. No writer can develop in a vacuum, or at least they can't develop as well as or as fast as they could in a vacuum. You will want to find people who are willing to read scripts. And if you think it's hard to get people to read prose, wait till you find out how hard it is to find people to read scripts. But you're going to want to find those people. You might want to exchange emails with the people who are right here in this room.
That's right. And
Because
we have a website that's totally free, lifewrite.com, lifewrite.com. And on that website, you will find writers who are following us, who are committed to the same excellence. And you can say, I will read your script if you read mine.
right, pretty much. So and we've talked about Alfred Hitchcock adding the dialogue last. So with your permission, I'm going to move on from that one, Annie.
Please do.
And short scripts. This is important. I used to teach in the screenwriting program at Antioch University in Santa Barbara, now in Los Angeles, and they didn't do this in the beginning, but they have now adopted a policy where they focus on teaching short scripts rather than features, which I think is really smart. Why? Because it's hard to learn how to write scripts. It's 3 times as hard, 4 times as hard to learn how to write a long script as opposed to a shorter script. So you don't want to run a marathon before you can walk around the block. And what people say is, I think in features, I think in novels, start watching more short films to
Yeah, if
get
you
an
think in novels,
idea of
that,
what they are. Like find there's one called, oh my God, Cargo, 6 minutes long.
yeah,
6 minutes long. They made a whole movie out of it. And
yeah, zombie movie.
the best part of the movie is still the 6 minutes in the original short script. So,
Yeah, they didn't really have anything to top the
no,
image that they did there. A short script, a lot of television commercials are miniature stories. You can see that, and so you could start by practicing writing a commercial that tells a mini story, and then go to 3 pages, then 10 pages, and go up as you develop your skills. This is very important because one of the most common mistakes people make is trying to write something that is too long before they're ready for it, and they cripple themselves.
right.
Yeah, it's awful.
I mean, if you're a novelist and you have an opportunity to write a script adapting your novel, yeah, absolutely do that, you know. But other than that, learn with short. Don't eat up months or years. Learn with short. They can be Oscar qualifying and win film festivals. And if you get into a film festival as the writer with a script, you get to go with the director or the producers and have the same networking opportunities they
Yeah,
have.
and look, we're going to Indianapolis for a convention this weekend. We're going to
Philadelphia for
Philadelphia next weekend to a film festival where our film is being shown. We're going to network with people because we're looking to make a feature. So what we're actually on that path saying to you that there are other ways to do this, but this way works.
Yeah, so proof of concept is something that if like say it's a short script, A, it proves you can write, B, it proves you've got a great story, and then you can get someone to shoot it or you can shoot it yourself, and now we can see what it might look like, which is an even greater step toward getting a feature made. So how do you find the short story? Find the perfect story arc for your character or story in between 5 or 20 pages, which is 5 to 20 minutes generally, and a moment of change. A moment of change. That's what you want, but it should be a complete story. You shouldn't be able to just have to be continued at the end and your viewer is unresolved. Make it a complete story, even if it's say just the first pages of a novel or the prologue of a novel, but it's a self-contained story, then that's your short script. Make it a complete story unto itself. So, for tools of the trade, we talked a lot about how you need to read scripts. Find final draft scripts online. This is the primary learning tool. You can buy some like Get Out, which has like a whole annotated version where he has scenes he cut and commentary. I mean, but you don't need all that necessarily. It's fun. But imsdb.com, the Internet Movie Script Database, has tons of movies. Sometimes you'll see first draft, second draft, third draft. Look for final draft, maybe a shooting script, but just like the Danger Word script that I emailed earlier today, sometimes those shooting scripts have things you don't need, like scene numbers, and you don't have to number your scenes. You are just concerned about the action and the characters on the end. Leave the rest to the director. For a screenwriting program, we recommend a free program called writerduet.com. You can write up to 3 scripts of any length for free on writerduet.com while you decide if you want to pay for it, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you look at the price for Final Draft, which is still considered the industry standard, but Writer Duet can be translated into Final Draft and vice versa. So don't make a huge investment in a platform like a Final Draft when there's a free tool right there called Writer Duet. It's called Writer Duet because it's meant for collaborating. Like if you're working with a partner and they're working remotely from you, their new additions will show up in red and stuff like that. That's just an extra perk. It's definitely also great if you're writing by yourself. And you want to get a whiteboard and maybe some magnetic cards for breaking story beats, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. This is a screenwriting page from Danger Word. So I sent everybody a copy of Danger Word if you registered for this. If you did not register, you can actually still register and get on the mailing list at screenwritingwebinar.com, and we'll make sure you get all the replay materials, all the, the screenplay, all that stuff. If you somehow you got in here or you're watching it on YouTube but you didn't register. This is, these are the basic things you need to know. In every scene begins with describing, are we inside or are we outside? Is it light or is it dark? That's pretty much interior dawn, exterior day. That's you'll see when you start reading more scripts that that is how every script goes. We have to know where we are. INT is interior, EXT is exterior. With dialogue, sometimes you'll see something that means OS, which means that they are present, but they're in the kitchen. So we can't see them. So mom's
Off
in the
stage.
kitchen saying, hey, what are you doing in there? Voiceover is like something that's used in flashbacks. They're not there. It's a disembodied voice. People confuse that all the time. So it is confusing. Off screen means they're off screen. Voiceover means they're not even in the room. Why do people put things in all caps? This is something I remember wondering. I had the pleasure of reading some scripts from Rick Famuyiwa, who's a fairly famous director now, and I didn't know why are things in all caps? I was probably still figuring it out when we were working on Danger Word. All caps is something that you want to bring attention to, something that you want the prop master to notice, the actor to notice, because honestly, a lot of people in Hollywood are pretty fast readers. They're not being very attentive. So all caps is meant to jump out of the page. This is something, if you're reading the scene, you need to know this. But don't worry about the technical film terms. Like you could, if you say bird's eye view, okay, but you don't really have to write camera angles. You don't have to say
Yeah, that's
medium
called
shot,
direct. That's
close
called
up.
directing your script.
Yeah.
Don't direct your script. Tell a story.
Right. Like if I want to say close on a cupcake because a kid is celebrating a birthday, okay. But just don't overdo it. Because if you're learning, especially, your tendency is going to be to overdo it. And my tendency is to write the script I see in my head, which means sometimes I am overwriting props. I'm overwriting direction and I have to pull it back. Even though I'm a director, I have to pull it back because it's cluttering. You see, first of all, notice how much white space there is on that script page. That is what scripts, in fact, maybe there's not enough white space. That's what scripts look like. they're not a whole bunch of paragraphs of description. They are the bare bones of what you need to convey the idea in a way that is compelling. And I'm going to move on to the next place. So, and this is also just sort of a continuation. Like I said, we're going to give you this deck. We're going to email it to you if you have registered. If you haven't, again, screenwritingwebinar.com. Get on that mailing list so you can get your materials. The fade in is just, the camera shot. Yeah, I don't use a lot of fade in, fade out, frankly. The scene heading is very important. When a character first appears, their names are in all caps, and you want to have an age there for casting purposes. And beautiful and wholesome is all this script says. That's all I mean, honestly, this is where a lot of learning screenwriters go way overboard, is in these character descriptions, because your characters are going to reveal themselves in the things they do and say. You don't need to front load it the way you would in prose with a whole paragraph about them. In fact, I highly advise against that, right? So just show what they're doing. Here they are, they're all caps, what they're doing, that's the action. Parentheticals, use sparingly, because again, it's the mark of a learning screenwriter that you're directing every single thing they say. Every single line of dialogue has some kind of like tugging her ear or playing with her earring. Like, if it's necessary, okay, add a parenthetical about what she's doing, but most of the time, no, just the dialogue. And yeah, that's it for the formatting. Outlining, honey, you want to take this one?
Yeah, outlining is so important because at every step, remember, you're creating a blueprint for other people to work from. So your story has to be very strong. You have to know exactly what you're doing and exactly what every scene means and where you're going. And so the more different ways you have of looking at your story, the better off you are. A common thing is a stack of 3x5 cards. You simply get a stack of 3x5 cards and you write down every scene you can think of, and you put a rubber band around it and you carry them everywhere you go. And every time you get a thought, you write it on a card, you organize it, you move it around, you compare that to the 3 page until you're building this up one story at a time. If you one bit at a time, one scene at a time, one beat at a time, one sequence at a time, one act at a time, that learning how to do these things, we use these terms. You will figure this out if you will watch movies and read scripts. In fact, if you'll do that single thing, you'll figure out how to do this. But remember the things we're saying so that as you do that, you're kind of filling in the gaps. Follow our way of doing it until you've done it a few times, and then you'll have your own way of doing it. And then maybe you'll turn around and teach us one day. I mean, seriously,
Yeah, like
it's
a beat sheet, and coming up with, like, say everything you know. Like Steve talks about the low hanging fruit. Okay, like let me write down everything I know about my story in terms of a sentence of, or not even a sentence, half a sentence. Jerry sees his brother at the bar. That's a beat. Jerry's brother Max is mad about whatever. That's the next beat. They go out for the heist they're late for. That's the next beat. Like, so if you're writing on index cards, each one of those beats would be a separate index card. In writers' rooms for television shows, you'll see that they put those beats up on a board for the whole room to see on magnetic cards, like we said here, and you shift them around. Like, hey, I've got an idea. Let's start with the heist. And then the flashback 1 hour earlier, you know what I mean? Like, okay, so yeah, shuffle it around. Don't be too precious about it. That's how you learn how to outline. It's starting with just the simplest beat. And then as your outline slash treatment grows, you're just adding more detail to it.
Look,
So,
I use Post-its, index cards, magnetic cards. I use huge sheets of paper, whiteboards. I will write, outlining programs. And every time you take your idea and break it down into a different one of these forms, you will see different things about your story.
yeah.
So it's, just start where you are. And I would suggest start tonight. Write one line about something you'd like to do tonight. Get started. Just get started. The momentum will teach you. The process will teach you. And once you learn how to see story differently, see film differently, your entire life changes.
Yeah, you start to think like a screenwriter. This is just reinforcing what we said, dialogue last. Think about your, I mean, again, principle, not a rule, but it's helpful if you can see the movie before you start adding the dialogue. This is some general advice on dialogue and screenplays. As we get to these last cards, we're going to be moving more quickly, but know that you will have all this information. You don't necessarily need me to read it to you because
No,
you're going to have it. But
right.
just remember
We hope you've
that.
been recording this and you're going to get this and you'll have a link to the replay and you'll also have a link to the deck.
Right. So I think if I look at this card, the thing that jumps out to me the most is the thing about subtext, not the text, because you might say, well, what the heck does that mean? So the text would be, hey, I waited for 2 hours. Why are you being so mean and blowing me off? That's what your character is literally thinking. If I were polishing that dialogue for many reasons, I would just be like, where were you? And the actor is going to bring all the other information about how long they've been waiting and that they're pissed off that they were kept waiting because that will be the acting of the way they say, where were you? You know? So that's just one example. And expositional dialogue is just people, describing stuff and yeah. Just say no one has lived here in a decade. And that's a hint for the set designer. And nobody has to say that. We can see it. We can see nobody's lived here in a decade, right? That's the kind of thing for, especially for prose writers. It's kind of hard for us to train ourselves to to not be expositional in dialogue. This is just some example of great dialogue. When it works, it works. We're quoting it for generations. Show me the money. Put the coffee down. Coffee is for closers. Of course, we all want to write that great dialogue, but before you can write that great dialogue, you need a great story to hang it on. So, I'm not going to take a deep dive into Danger Word now, but we sent you the final movie. In fact, that can be your first exercise, is reading the script after you've watched Danger Word once. And the first thing you're going to notice is all the differences between the final movie and the script. That is true of almost every script, even if they say it's a final draft. When I read Sinners, I was like, what? The original script opened with Remick the vampire running for safety at this house? It started with Remick? Yes. The original script for Sinners started with Remick. So you'll see all those differences. But in these cards, we've given you lessons for learning screenwriters. Some of them are repeating what we've said, but you'll be able to apply them to what you view and read in Danger Word. And as I said in the email, Danger Word is not a fancy script, okay? And by that I mean we wrote that for my best friend to shoot a movie. We did not write it to try to sell it. We might have used a little prettier language here and there. And, you do want to create a good read when you're trying to sell something. And the Danger Word script is very by the numbers. But that's a good thing because by the numbers works. We shot our movie from that by the numbers script.
And we got to see some magic happen when the actors begin to interact with each other. That's when it happens. It's like when
Yes.
first time you see that, if you're not already in love with making movies, that will absolutely warm your heart. It's like, oh my God, this is movie making.
And just to get you started on what a beat sheet looks like, these are, it's spoilery, so maybe
Yeah,
watch
don't
the,
read this
yeah,
until you've seen
it's
the movie.
spoilery. It's
Don't over
spoilery.
this. Yeah, that's
But it just that
spoilery.
it just shows you like this happens, this happens, this happens. It's not, don't overthink it. It's just what happens next, what happens next, what happens next. This is a list of the visual symbols we used in Danger Word. Some of the things that might have been in all caps because it was important for the scene. So that's to help you think in visual symbols as you're working on your short script. These are how the visual symbols look when they're on film, that rope behind her, etc. This is dialogue in Danger Word. It's not fancy, but it's effective. This is a moment when these two characters are reaffirming that they are surviving. Think about that chakra that is survival. That is what this entire movie is about. Um, and don't fill your script with unnecessary details. I think we have already delved into that, but it bears repeating. You remember that white space on that script? Compare your script page to the professional scripts you're reading and make sure you're not cluttering it with paragraphs that are overly long. It should sing. It should just sort of flow by. It doesn't need to, it shouldn't look blocky and it shouldn't look like a short story. It should look like a script. Not over directing, we're just going over that again. Actors act the text, not the subtext. Instead of saying he stomps his foot, that's over directing. He's angry. That's all you need to say. However, the actor wants to be angry, that's up to him to decide. We have a three-act structure for when you do move up to writing feature-length films. For a short film, uh, the short film is probably just almost like one act into unto itself sometimes.
But
So,
even then, there is going to be a build up,
yeah,
a period where you are presenting your, you present your thesis, you present the development of the thesis leading to a crisis point, at which point the character has to dig deep or something else comes in. So even within a television commercial, you're going to notice the way they go through. This is the introduction, this is the development, this is the payoff. You're going to
right.
see that, obstacle, objective, obstacle, outcome. So these things, you're going to get all this stuff.
There are tons of books on story structure for screenwriting. And you prose writers, even if you get tired of writing scripts, those lessons will help you be a better novelist. These are just a couple of examples of graphics. I know for me, I study dancing videos. Like every once in a while, there's a teacher who says something a little bit different and it gets through on a deeper level, even though another teacher might have been trying to say the same thing. So cast a wide net as you look for. Save the Cat is a very popular book on story structures.
Robert McKee's book Story.
That's the one
Robert
we
McKee
like the
is
best.
Aristotle. He's the best story structure teacher in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
And we do have a list of resources in this deck, so don't feel again like we're glossing over. You are going to have a personal copy of this deck, so we're not going to be glossing over anything. This is a scene construction overview. Use it with your first scene. What's your hook to get our attention? How do you show us the who, what, when, where, why, and how in your first scene? How do you establish that character immediately and those visual symbols? And how do you show your balance of dialogue? And in this case, it would be action instead of exposition. This is some advice from Robert McKee on scenes. Once you get started, there's really no point in us delving deeply into this until you're actually working on your scene. And I think then you
But we
look at
want to
this.
give you everything you need to keep
Yeah,
going. We want to keep our promise to you about that.
yeah, as you're working on your scene and you're like, okay, have I defined my conflict? What's at stake? Like that's, I think using this as a diagnostic is the best approach rather than just me just lecturing at you. Use this tool and better yet, read Story by Robert McKee, which is where this is from. That was just a distillation of it. So the master strategy, Steve.
Okay, let's watch a movie every Saturday night. As you do, read the script. Do this every week for a year, and you create the unconscious connections that connect dreams to format and structure. And do this with movies you've already seen, because it's not a good way to watch a good movie for the first time.
Right. So what's next after you're writing your script? Well, collaboration. For those of you who decide you're going to collaborate, you'll want to refer to this slide about how to make that work without wanting to kill each other. Writing is rewriting, and this is so true in screenwriting. So, so, so true. That is probably the most challenging part of screenwriting or any writing is the number of drafts it takes to feel like you've gotten it right. So writing is rewriting. Keep your power and your emotional balance. Take charge of your future in terms of, well, we're going to be talking about this later. Make this dang thing yourself, or publish a short story that someone else could option. Being a screenwriter and a prose writer is a huge advantage. And try to keep your emotions in check. Every time someone says yes when you're in the world of screenwriting, it feels like your life is about to change. And everybody says no, it feels like you're never going to amount to anything. So you really need to sort of keep a handle on those highs and lows and focus on the work. Focus on
Right.
the work.
Now, the magic formula is just my way of looking at life for high performance. the MAGIC. You need a map or model of career path and achievement. You need to be taking constant action. In order to fight fear, you need faith. And the doorway to faith is gratitude. So you find things you're already grateful for. Like you could be grateful for this class, and you could use that to kind of get you going tomorrow. Intentions must be clear. You have to have a goal. Where do you want to be in a year? Really important. And you need to, the C is actually, these days, it's child, connecting with the child inside you. So that's an error that I did on this, and
And
I'm
that can
open.
also give you confidence and courage.
Yes, but it's when I mean, that's actually a truth. We would walk through fire for our children. Will you walk through fire for the child inside you that wants to be a writer? Will you? Will you? Are you willing to go through anything, including your own fear? Because if you are, welcome to the tribe.
And we've already talked about everything on this slide, so I'm
Yes,
going to
we
move on
already have.
to the next one, which is our path to directing, which we never planned to do, but it was
No,
The Keeper, that same story that we started as a treatment we were showing to someone just to see if he liked the story. That was it. But it turned out he was an editor, John Jennings. He published it as a graphic novel illustrated by Marco Finnegan. The next thing we knew, we were directing a short version of The Keeper. So what we did was we extracted the basically first third of the movie as a short film
that's
and
right.
we directed it.
And and when you realize that you could write and direct a short film of your own for $50. You could deliberately write a movie that you could shoot on your iPhone
In one location.
in one location, and that would give you the experience of what was in my head, what ended up there. Just two people talking to each other. My dinner with Andre. It's just two people talking to each other. You can do this yourself, and that's what we're about now. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Yeah, because like I said, we want to pass on everything we learn as soon as we learn it. The Keeper is not the first short film we've written, but it is the first short film we've directed. Danger Word was the first short film we wrote together, which you'll see and you'll watch. Um, but because of that experience and because it was so hard fought, we want to give you a hack and an advantage so
Yeah,
that
we
you don't.
figured out a shortcut.
Yeah, it's basically, and honestly, I know people who worked in the industry for years selling scripts who had never seen anything produced. So I don't think that's why most people go into screenwriting. I think we want to actually see a movie and learning how to make your own short film, whether it's the most basic version Steve just talked about, which is $50 or less in an iPhone, or the next step would be finding some community college kids who have camera equipment and your friend who's always wanted to direct and your other friend who's great at editing video. That friend may be 17 years old. You know, there are ways to make movies all the way to the way we made it, which was almost a six-figure budget with a Japanese investor in conjunction with Malcolm D. Lee's Blackmail
So
Productions, which
if you
did
see what we're
Best
talking
Man.
about here, it's how do you stair step your way up the
Yeah.
industry? Some of those steps you can take yourself. And we want to give you every tool you need to start that process. Move to the next slide, sweetheart.
Yeah, so I just want to say on September 12th, we are teaching a live real webinar, which is 3 hours. We did the 3 hour one. You can come in person or you can do it like you're doing it right now with every step of how to make your own short film.
Okay.
And here's what
So
you'll get.
you're going to get 3 hours of core lecture, everything that we have learned boiled down. We're doing this right now so that we didn't have to make it a 4 or 4.5 hour.
Yes.
This because you do need to understand this. But once you've got that, we're going to give you everything else you need to get started and to know how to move faster.
Yeah. And bonus interviews from industry insiders. We've been very fortunate to have made some friends and allies in the industry who can, and some of them have been on our podcast, Life Writing, Write for Your Life, to talk about what it takes. What are their tips?
Because that's what we did. We sat down with them and asked them, how do we do this? And
Yeah.
they told us.
And we're
And
still
it was
asking.
like, oh my God, how come nobody writes about this? How come nobody talks about this? So you'll have a rewatchable class video as well as transcripts and additional class materials. We're going to give you everything. We're willing to give you this much for free. I ask you to
Yeah,
imagine what we're going to
true.
do for the other workshop.
Yeah, what will we do for a paid workshop if this is all for free? And then we'll have an exclusive screening of The Keeper for our class. It's premiering at the Black Star Film Festival in Philadelphia, where I understand it was nominated as best short narrative. I didn't even realize it was one of the finalists for best short narrative. Very exciting. But we'll have a private screening for you along with a Q&A. So it's not, again, just theoretical. We'll tell you exactly what we did and how we did it. And I think the most important thing, honestly, is membership in our Life Writing Professional Workshop. There are some of you present who are already in our Life Writing Professional Workshop, workshopping your prose. We've done a screenwriting workshop. We don't get as many scripts as I would even like to see, but we do have working directors and screenwriters who are members of Life Writing Professional. So we generally meet every other week. We workshop 2 works, and it is honestly, workshopping is the fastest way to grow as a writer, period.
You have to
Anyone,
network. In
yeah.
Hollywood, you have to network. You can write stories or books in your basement by yourself and send it off and have it published anonymously. But if you're going to work in Hollywood, you need to be working with other human beings. You need to know the language. You need to understand how to present yourself and how to tell your story so that they will open their checkbooks for you.
And
That is
frankly,
not a joke.
other screenwriters who understand how to read screenplays and how to give you advice. You know, your friends and partners and parents might love everything you write, but they don't know how to tell you to fix a screenplay, you know? So the total value of our course, if we were charging the total value, the lecture alone would be $500. The bonus interviews, $300. The replay, $99. Honestly, the membership in Life Writing Professional, if you compare that to, say, an MFA program, would be way more than $300. The keeper screening, $50 for a total value of $1,250. That's what it would be if we were charging what we honestly think it's worth. But until August 1st, it's only $297 for the best film class you've ever taken. It's, nothing against going to film school. If you got tens of thousands of dollars and that time, go for it. But a lot of us did not and do not have that. So what we're offering you is our hard-won advice. Steve, after, gosh, honey, what, 30 plus years?
Yeah.
And me, I've been in here for a minute too. Practical advice. Like we've made everything from, like we said, the almost six-figure short film to I did a movie where I was lost on a hiking trail with my iPhone that I made myself.
And
And this is our,
if you will do this, if you bring us your heart and your head and you've got an iPhone, you can start this process and we will show you how to stair step. There's a very specific process to step, it's like you want to know how to make movies that cost millions of dollars. We know how to put you on that path. And in the process, you will create things that you'll be able to show to your friends. And you'll have it's so much fun.
and put
It's
up on
so
YouTube, put up
much
on Vimeo.
fun.
We
And we're going to teach you how to do this.
And it's so the way you sign up for the class, and it's only till August 1st that we have this early bird discount. It's www.hollywoodloophole.com. Hollywoodloophole.com is the upcoming class that this is all in preparation for. That's a picture of us on the set when we were shooting The Keeper. And yeah, I am very,
Now,
very exciting
are we
about
ready to take
excited.
questions?
We are. We are. I just wanted to make sure people saw our cute little picture from the set. But I see the chat has been on fire, and I have no
The
idea.
in-person is going to be in Southern California. It might be in Pasadena.
Yeah, we're thinking maybe Pasadena.
Yeah, we're thinking maybe Pasadena, but we're going to have so much fun. We have such a good time doing this. We love teaching so much, and we would absolutely adore it if you would join us for this.
Does
We
anyone
are,
have any
while
questions?
you're in the middle of this, our agents and managers called and they want to do a meeting with us tomorrow morning about the keeper. We are
They do?
sandwiched in our teaching in and around other business. It's like, so Carrie raised her hand again. Let's get this.
I just want to know about this. So I know you touched on this before
Oh, you're kidding.
about there's people who are writing all these scripts and they get sold, the scripts get sold. but they never become movies?
That's right.
Oh,
I
Exactly.
just
most
wanted to know about
scripts. Mo
the ownership of that. Like, if you sell your script but it never becomes a movie, do you get a chance
Well, that
to?
depends on what you negotiate. So you're going to want an agent. Once somebody says that they want to buy your script, you can go to any agent in town and say, "Would you like to negotiate this for me?" And they'll say yes. If the person is serious, and one of the things you want to make sure of is that the script will revert to you in a particular period of time. That's in the negotiation.
Okay.
yeah.
All
Who
right.
else has a question?
Let me unmute. Let me mute.
There's a question about at what point in the process is it best to register your treatment as screenplay. The Writers Guild of America has a script registration service, and you can do that. They will do that for you. I would say you register a complete script. Unlike books, it is true people in Hollywood will steal your ideas if you're not
They
careful.
sure will.
So you want to be cautious about that. The rights website you talked about, the screenwriting website, or the class link again, www.hollywood
Loophole.
loophole. Hey, why don't you put that put the picture up on the screen? We can have we don't need to be
Oh,
big
sure,
picture.
sure, sure. Like, forget
Put
about
that up there.
us. This is the
Crystal.
important thing. Crystal's hand is up.
Hi, I had actually put this question in the chat. I was a little confused. How do you balance telling the story visually and not acting like you're the set designer, prop person
Well, the
that
most
Practice.
is?
important thing you can do is read scripts and watch the movie. You'll see it. If you
Yeah.
do that by the time you've done that 10 times, you will understand the connection between scripts and films.
Yeah, it's
That
really hard to describe in this context because it's so obvious the difference between what you're seeing on a screen and that little bit that's on the page. Like most scripts are not describing what anybody's wearing unless there's some significance to what they're wearing.
Yeah, if
It,
it becomes a clue for Sherlock Holmes, then yeah, you need to there's mud on his shoes because later on he deduces that the guy was not at home all night. You see, so other than that, leave it alone. You're not a costumer. You're not any of those things. You're a writer. Tell us the story. Tell us, guide our hearts. Why do we
Right.
care about this person? What do they want? What do they need? And only by reading scripts and watching movies, if you get nothing out of this but that, every Saturday night is movie night from now on until you break in. Okay.
and it
If you
is
will do
mind
that, you
blowing.
will get this.
I mean, I've been doing this comparative reading for some time, but I was still blown away at the difference between the way Sinners started in that draft and what ended up on the final screen. And more to your point, how many of those details, like which clothes are important, which items in the room are important, as opposed to just saying your grandmother's kitchen. Like your grandmother's kitchen paints a picture for that for those people working on the set. So yeah, it's practice. That's the best way to create that balance is by exposure and practice. Heidi.
Heidi.
Thank you.
I had a question because of a story that I'm working on. Tananarive, you said, you don't have to always tell somebody, well, she's playing with the earring or something. I
Mm.
literally have a character that there's a secret, like, communication device in her
Oh,
earring.
that's
You have
different.
to say
And
it.
so each time I have her pull on her earring, it's because she is sending information.
Oh, that
Yes,
is
And
totally different.
so
Yeah.
that's very
if
different.
I have that in there, is that something that I would then like capitalize the first time? And then when somebody's like, oh, I'm tired of seeing her do this, but they get to the reveal where she sent all this information
Yes.
secretly to,
I would capitalize it every
okay,
time. I
thank
mean,
you. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. That's
Any
a
script, any
perfect
tip,
example of something that actually matters.
a question here, horror specific question. Any tips for making a script scary? In order to do this workshop in this period of time, it's just this, watch horror movies, read their scripts.
But
I'm telling you, it's
I
nothing more than that. Watch
I
horror movies
will
that you love and read the scripts.
I will also say that if you create characters that are realistic enough, almost anything, like a salt shaker moving across the table, is scary. If I believe your story, that I think that's the most important thing is that we believe the characters, honestly. But we also have a whole course on Dark Dreams, writing horror. So, or
Yep.
write your horror story in 30 days. That's a different course. So, yeah, hopefully
And
that's
then in
helpful.
Life Writing Professional or in life writing, we answer all these questions and more. But the most important thing, watch movies, read scripts.
Read the
You'll figure
scripts.
it out.
Know what
Because
scares
then you'll
you.
be ready to make your own movie. Because movie is a proof of concept. Well, there's so many different reasons to do it, from fun to business. And I
Horror
just,
is great, by the way, for low budget filmmaking. I mean, you could call it found footage, which is what I did when I took my iPhone and I made this little short called Lost. It could be jittery and it's like that's part of the fun. So horror is the perfect way to get your entree into filmmaking.
it really is.
Who else has a question?
Do we have any more questions? Because it's time for us to wrap up.
We are thrilled, by the way, that so many of you came. I know it was moving quickly, and I apologize for that. There was a lot of material crammed in here, but we, like Steve said, better now than when we're trying to teach our webinar on filmmaking in September, because that is the first part. Before you have a movie to make, you have to have a script.
It all
So
starts with the script, people. It all starts with the script.
So rewatch this. We are going to send you the replay link. We're going to send you the Google Slides. You have Danger Word, the film, and Danger Word, the script, just to get started. But honestly, go out, think of your favorite movie you watched this year or last year, find the script online, watch it again with the script, and you are on your way to becoming both a screenwriter and potentially a filmmaker.
Take care.
Thanks so much, everybody, for coming to this. We really enjoyed. Let me take the share off. We really, 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 really enjoyed. Oh, I love
Thank
Nicole's
you.
advice about reading out loud. Yes, especially dialogue. Oh my gosh, read your dialogue out loud. That is a great tip. So much homework to do, but you all are going to do great. And thank you so much for attending.
Thank you. We want to see your movie.
All
We want
right,
you to like those movies and make them.
HollywoodLoophole.com.
HollywoodLoophole.com. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.